In the last class, we have stated and proved Myhill-Nerod theorem, and today we are going to see applications of Myhill-Nerod theorem. So here is the first corollary of Myhill-Nerod theorem, and it states that a language R over an alphabet set sigma is regular if and only if the canonical equivalence relation for the language R is of finite index. And recall that the canonical equivalence relation for any language satisfies all properties of a Myhill-Nerod relation except the finite index property. And the statement is that if it satisfies the finite index property also, then the language is regular, and if it is not satisfying the property, then the language is non-regular. That is the statement, and which is very useful, and we are going to prove it now. There are two cases. First is the if case. Suppose it is of finite index. Then we know that it satisfies all the properties of an Mn relation and hence is an Mn relation. If it is an Mn relation, then we have this construction which takes an Mn relation and gives you a deterministic finite state automaton for accepting the language. Because we are getting a deterministic finite state automaton, the language is regular. So we proved that when the canonical equivalence relation for a language is having only finitely many equivalence classes, the language is regular. So we can prove regularity using this corollary. The other case is only if. We want to prove that it is regular only if it is of finite index. That is, we have to prove that when it has infinitely many equivalence classes, then the language is non-regular. We are going to prove this statement in its contrapositive form. That is, we want to prove that when R is regular, then this relation is having only finitely many equivalence classes. Why these two are equivalent is, if you recall from logic, we know that if we want to prove that P implies Q, it's enough to prove that negation Q implies negation P. It is a contrapositive form. P implies Q is same as saying negation Q implies negation P. Here Q is R is non-regular, so negation Q is R is regular. P is infinitely many equivalence class, so negation P is finitely many equivalence class. So we have to prove that when R is regular, then this relation is having only finitely many equivalence classes. Let us prove it. Suppose R is regular, then without loss of generality, we can assume that there exists a deterministic finite state automaton A for R. Then the reverse of this construction that we learned in a previous class, that is taking a deterministic finite state automaton, the construction gives you a Myhill-Nerod relation for the same language. So you are now getting a Myhill-Nerod relation. Now from Myhill-Nerod theorem, we know that any Myhill-Nerod relation refines the canonical equivalence relation, and hence the number of equivalence classes in the canonical relation is less than the number of equivalence classes in this relation, which is finite because it's a Myhill-Nerod relation. And hence we proved that the number of equivalence classes is finite. So what we observed with that, if the language is regular, then the number of equivalence classes is finite, and if the number of equivalence classes is finite, then the language is regular. So this is both a necessary and sufficient condition. Given a language, you look at the equivalence classes of the canonical equivalence relation for the language. If the equivalence classes is finitely many, language is regular, otherwise the language is non-regular. Now we proved it, and let us go and apply it to prove regularity first. Prove that the language over AV where the number of A's is odd is regular. So we have to prove that the number of equivalence classes of this relation is finite. Recall the definition of the equivalence relation. What is it? Two strings x and y are related if and only if when we append the same string z to x and y, we will get xz and yz. Either both xz and yz are in the language, or both xz and yz are not in the language. That is the definition of this relation. We want to now find the equivalence classes of this relation which partition this sigma star into a number of equivalence classes. We may try to find the equivalence class for epsilon first. See whether A is going to the class of epsilon or not. For that we need to see whether A and epsilon are related or not. But we can prove that epsilon and A are not related because you can find an Z. Z is epsilon. If you concatenate epsilon to epsilon, you will get epsilon, where the number of A's is 0 and not in the language. But if you concatenate epsilon to A, you will get A, number of A's 1, which is odd and hence in the language. So when you get Z as epsilon, one of them will go to the language and the other one will not go to the language, and hence these two are non-related, meaning you need to have a separate equivalence class for A. Now we need to see where B is going. Ask this question, is epsilon and B related? Maybe it is going to form a third class or it goes to one of these classes. Is epsilon related to B? If yes, then it goes to this class. The answer is yes. Why? Because you consider any Z. And now suppose when you concatenate Z to epsilon, the resulting string is in the language. There is another case that we will consider later. Consider the first case where the concatenation of any Z is some string with epsilon is in the language. By definition, why is it in the language? Because the number of A's in the whole string must be odd. Here you know that it is only 0. So to get an odd number in Z, you need to have odd number of A's. If in Z there are odd number of A's, what will be the number of A's in BZ? Odd number plus 0 is odd number. So in BZ also will be in the language when epsilon Z is in the language. Now the other case, suppose epsilon Z is not in the language. Then why is it so? Because number of A's in Z is even. Then what will be the number of B's in BZ? Even number plus 0 is even. So it is not in the language. So you can see that for all Z, when you concatenate Z with epsilon and B, either both are in the language or both are not in the language. Hence these two are related and hence B is going to the equivalence class of epsilon. And in fact, you can observe that the epsilon class is exactly this. The set of all strings with a even number of A's is coming into this equivalence class. Why? Maybe we can try to see why. Because if you consider any string in the equivalence class of epsilon, that means in X there are even number of A's. Now there are two cases. Suppose Z contain odd number of A's, then an even number plus an odd number is an odd number and hence the resulting string will be in the language. So if you take any two strings and concatenate Z, when Z is having odd number of A's, both will be in the language. And when Z is having even number of A's, both will not be in the language. And hence you can see that any two strings with even number of A's are related. Similarly, the only other class is the set of all strings with the odd number of A's. So in this case, there are only two equivalence classes and hence from the previous corollary we can conclude that this language is regular. The proof is done, but if you want you can look at the construction also. So here are the only two equivalence classes and this is the construction. So the state set is these two equivalence classes. What is the start state corresponding to this state? That is the start state. Now the transitions. A transition is going to this state by because A transition must from an equivalence class X, A transition must go to XA. That means concatenate epsilon and A, you will get the class of A. That is why it goes to here. Now where is the B transition going? Because epsilon concatenated with B is B. In B there are even number of A's and hence it is in the equivalence class of epsilon. Now from here A is coming back to epsilon. Why is it so? A concatenated with A is A square and there are even number of A's and in the class of epsilon. Now from A the B comes back to A. Why? Because A concatenated with B is AB and there are only odd number of A's in this. So it goes to the equivalence class of A. So it stays back, and that is the set of transition, and the only remaining case is set of final state, and here it's odd number, and so this is going to be the final state. So we got DFA, and this concession is not required. From the up to this point is enough to conclude that this is regular. Another example. Language is set of all strings with a number of A's is even and number of B's is odd. Find the number of equivalence classes. Same equation. You can see that these are the equivalence classes. For the interest of time, I am not going to verify the correctness of this equivalence classes. Please do it offline. But you can see that these are precisely the set of equivalence classes, and when you apply the construction, you will get this automaton. Okay, so now we have used the first corollary to prove that certain languages are regular by observing that the number of equivalence classes in the canonical relation is finite. Now we are going to use it for proving non-regularity. And here two assignment questions are given to you. Apply MN theorem. Observe that the corresponding equivalence classes are finitely many, and prove that these languages are regular. Now we are going to prove non-regularity using the same theorem. So prove that this language a to the power n, b to the power n, when n is greater than or equal to 0 is non-regular. We had proved it using pumping lemma, but now we are going to prove it again using Michael-Nerode theorem. Here we want to prove that there are infinitely many equivalence classes for this relation. Recall the definition of the relation and see what sigma star is, and we want to prove that there are infinitely many equivalence classes. Different ways you can prove, but I am going to give you a candidate solution. For that, I am going to have this claim that for all I and j in n naught, natural numbers with 0, whenever I is not equal to j, I am claiming that a to the power I is not related to a to the power j under this relation. They are not equivalent. If I claim that I want to find an z such that when I concatenated z to both of them, the resulting strings, from the resulting string, one will be interlanguage and the other will not be interlanguage. I am going to give such an z. Assume that I is not equal to j. Then you take z as b to the power I, b to the power I. When I concatenate b to the power with a to the power I, then the resulting string is of this form and in the language. But a to the power j, b to the power I is not in the language because I is not equal to j. Hence the proof is done, and I can find infinitely many pairs such that I is not equal to j, and hence there are infinitely many equivalence classes, and hence it is enough to conclude that the language is non-regular. See, in this case, it's easier than using pumping lemma, I think. Consider one more example, maybe a little more difficult one. Prove that the language a to the power n factorial over the singleton alphabet set A is not regular. Need to prove that there are infinitely many equivalence classes, and here sigma star is this, a set of strings on A, string of A's of different lengths. Here again you can prove it in different ways, but I am going to give you a candidate solution with a claim. My claim is that if I take any two integers I and j in this set, okay, what is this set? 2, 3, 4, etc. I am not considering 0 and 1 from natural numbers. Whenever j is greater than I claim that a to the power I factorial is not related to a to the power j factorial under the canonical relation. That means I can find an z such that when I concatenate z with maybe a to the power I factorial, the resulting string is in the language, and when I concatenate the same z to a to the power j factorial, the resulting string is not in the language. That is what I am going to give you. Suppose j is greater than I, and this is the z I am giving you. A to the power I factorial multiplied by I, that is a number. Okay. So you can rewrite this as take I factorial outside. You can add these two numbers a to the power I factorial plus I factorial multiplied by I. You take I factorial out. You can rewrite this as I factorial into, here is 1 plus I, which is I plus 1 into I factorial is exactly I plus 1 factorial. So the resulting string is a to the power I plus 1 factorial, and hence is in the language because it is a to the power k factorial where k is equal to I plus 1 in the language. Now see what will happen when I append the same result to a to the power j factorial. So I'll get a to the power j factorial followed by a to the power I factorial into I. I'm saying that this is not in the language because if you look at the number line, this is the number line where I am mapping all the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. But I am showing you only the factorials on this line, number line. This is I factorial, I plus 1 factorial, j plus 1 factorial, etc. It goes. And what is j plus 1 factorial in terms of j factorial? You can say that j plus 1 factorial is nothing but j factorial plus j factorial multiplied by j. If you take j factorial out, you will get j plus 1 factorial easily. And that's the case. And you can see that this is j plus 1 factorial, which is strictly greater than the number you are getting here. What is the number you are getting here? J factorial. If you add these two, you are getting j factorial plus I factorial multiplied by I, which is less than this because j is greater than I. When j is greater than I, you can see that in the LHS what we are doing is LHS of the greater than, we are adding j factorial into j to j factorial. But in the RHS we are adding to j factorial what? I factorial into I. And this in this oval is strictly less than this because j is greater than I. Okay, so we have done, and if you want to see it on the number line, you can see that I plus 1 factorial, I am getting I plus 1 factorial by adding I factorial into I to this number. So this distance is I factorial into I. So if I add the same distance, I will get a point here because j plus 1 factorial is here, which is j factorial plus j factorial multiplied by j, which is this distance is more than the distance that we can add to get I plus 1 factorial. And you can see that actually the distance between the successive factorials on the number line increases when it goes to the right. So that's a non case, but I'm explicitly showing the proof here. So I proved that these two are not equivalent, and I can find infinitely many j and I satisfying this j greater than I, and hence I have infinitely many equivalence classes. So I am done. This is not regular. Okay, I am giving you two assignment questions. Using Michael-Nerod theorem, prove that the number of equivalence classes here is infinite, and conclude that it is non-regular. The language is set of all strings with a number of a's more than number of b's. Another language, a to the power p, where p is a prime number, is non-regular. So you do it as an assignment. I'm moving to the second corollary now. Second corollary is that there exists a deterministic automaton for any language. Any language can be regular or non-regular. This is a very strong corollary. So the Michael-Nerod theorem tells us that for an arbitrary language, even if it is non-regular, there exists a deterministic automaton. Actually, it's a canonical deterministic automaton. We will prove it now. We know that this construction, that is taking this canonical equivalence relation, when if you apply the construction for the same Michael-Nerod theorem, this may not be a Michael-Nerod relation, but if you apply it, this is the construction. What will happen? If it is a Michael-Nerod relation, you will get finitely many states. But if it is not a Michael-Nerod relation, you will get infinitely many states. That is the only difference. So if you apply the same construction, Then if there are only finitely many classes, you will get a DFA, and hence the language is regular. If there are infinitely many classes, you will get a deterministic automaton, but with infinitely many states. That's fine. So this is a wonderful result which tells that there exists a canonical deterministic automaton for an arbitrary language over sigma. So that canonical deterministic automaton means the one with the least number of states. If the language is regular, you are going to get the minimal deterministic automata, that is the third corollary. And if it is non-regular, you are getting the minimal state infinite automata for it. Maybe we can see an example. See what is the canonical deterministic automaton for a to the power n, b to the power n. For that, first you need to find all the equivalence classes. You can see that these are the equivalence classes. This is infinitely many classes are represented by ak. Each a to the power k is an equivalence class where k is greater than or equal to 0. Another set of infinite equivalence classes. What is that? A to the power I plus k followed by b to the power I for each k is going to be a separate equivalence class. And this is the third one. Actually, all the strings going to these two sets of equivalence classes. If you subtract that from the set of all strings, the remaining string which are not going to these two will form the third equivalence class. So if you apply this construction, these are the states, equivalence classes. AK is this. That is a to the power k where k is greater or equal to 0. A to the power 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. What is this? A to the power I plus k, b to the power I. Here is k equal to 0, k equal to 1, k equal to 2, k equal to 3, etc. It goes. So in these two rows, there are infinitely many equivalence classes, and this is the third row with a single equivalence class. And next step is you can find the start state, which is the class represented by epsilon. So this is the start state. Next step is transitions. So you can fill all the transitions. Please verify it offline. And lastly, you can decide the set of final states. These are the final states because these are the strings in the language. See, epsilon is accepted, a b is accepted, a p is accepted, 3 a's followed by 3 b's is accepted. So that's it. So this is a wonderful result, and Michael-Nerod theorem tells us that for any language there is a canonical deterministic automaton. If the language is regular, then it is a DFA, otherwise it's going to be an infinite state deterministic automaton. That's it. With this, let us move on to the third corollary, which tells us that if language L is regular, then the automaton constructed from the canonical equivalence relation is going to be the unique minimal automaton. Recall that in lecture 24, we have learned an algorithm to minimize the states of a deterministic automaton. And you can also use Michael-Nerod theorem. If you construct the automaton from the canonical equivalence relation, you are exactly getting the minimized automaton. That's what corollary 3 is telling. Here is the proof. Suppose you apply the automata construction on the canonical equivalence relation, which is a Michael-Nerod relation when it is regular. You are getting the unique minimal automaton because we can verify that the equivalence relation used by the state minimization algorithm that we discussed in lecture 24. That relation is two reachable states p and q are equivalent or collapsible when for all string z, the path for z from p and q both goes to a final state or both goes to a non-final state. No need to remember it, but this was the equivalence relation. You can see that when you construct the automaton using this algorithm from the canonical equivalence relation, then this relation is going to be the identity relation. Identity relation means when p and q are related, p is equal to q. That means you cannot collapse actually. Only p is related to p. Maybe you can observe it by using this assignment question. Apply the state minimization algorithm discussed in lecture 24 on the DFA which is obtained as the solution to the assignment 1A of this lecture flight 55 and verify that the automaton that you are getting is the unique minimal automaton. You can observe that you cannot collapse it. It is actually the minimal automaton. So today we have seen three corollaries for Michael-Nerode theorem, and we can that we can prove that a language is regular. We can prove that a language is non-regular. We can prove that there exists a deterministic automaton for any language, regular or not, and we also show that the automaton produced by the canonical automaton for a regular language is the unique minimal automaton. Thank you.